Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives. Well, it's the beginning of a new era. We have wrapped up all the comics that have had anything to do with the Spider-Verse era, and on Tuesday we looked at the last of the comics that were involved with the Venomverse era. So today, I think it's time we get back to the Spider in the Spider-Verse retrospectives, as today we're going to be looking at comics associated with the actual sequel to Spider-Verse. Namely, today we're going to be looking at what I call the Spider-Geddon era. Of course, like I just said, the Spider-Geddon was a storyline that was advertised as the actual sequel to Spider-Verse. And like with Spider-Verse, it involved kind of the similar themes of, bringing together all the Spideys of the multiverse in order to face off against a threat that no one of them could handle on their own. And from there, it was kind of more or less more of the same of what we experienced in Spider-Verse with, yeah, kind of spoilers here. It's more, even the bad guys are the same. So basically, it was just kind of the story is just kind of there to help give us more Spider-Verse related shenanigans to be involved in. And in my opinion, I also think that the reason the comic even came into existence at all was because around the time that the comic was coming out, the film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was coming out. So I think that what was going on was that Marvel wanted to try and cash in on the Spider-Verse name any way they could, and they figured that the best way that they could, besides the movie, was to bank on it coming out and release a comic that kind of followed a similar theme as, well, Spider-Geddon, which, of course, would follow up with what happened there, which, of course, could probably draw people to the original comic, and so on and so forth. But even with that in mind, Spider-Geddon still kind of had to stand on its own merits. After all, this is a sequel to Spider-Verse, a storyline that is famous for, again, bringing together all the Spideys of the multiverse into one mega crossover where they all faced a family of monsters who were hunting them down. So, does Spider-Geddon deliver in the same way that Spider-Verse did? Or does it fall flat? Is it the Venomized to Spider-Verse's Venomverse? Or is it something that's really worth reading, and investing your time into? Well, it's time that we get into that, and much like with Spider-Verse, we're going to be looking at all the lead-in material before we look at the Spider-Geddon storyline itself, and like with Spider-Verse, Spider-Geddon also has tie-ins. So after we finish up the main story, we're going to be looking at all that stuff, and yes, there is also some follow-up material. In this case, it's a storyline in a Spider-Man comic. We'll be looking at that as well, but like with Spider-Verse, we're going to get to it all in its own time. But of course, since we are looking at the lead-in material first, that means we got an Edge of miniseries to look at. And in this case, what we're looking at now is Edge of Spider-Geddon, which unlike some Edge of Spider-Verse and Edge of Venomverse, this is actually a 4-issue miniseries rather than a 5-issue one. But don't misunderstand, it still follows the same themes as those other 2 Edge of miniseries, as every issue of this comic focuses on a different Spidey from across the multiverse and they're doing their own thing before they got involved with Spider-Verse. Well, for most of them. There is one story that technically takes place after all of Spider-Geddon is there, but it is still mentioned, so whatever, it's still there. So whatever, I'm still going to kind of put in that pool. But with that said, does Edge of Spider-Geddon deliver? Well, let's find out. Actually, before I get into it, I also should mention one more thing. This trade not only has the 4-issue miniseries, but it also has one comic that acts as another lead-in. Again, we'll get to that when we get to that, but I'm stalled enough. Today, let's actually get to talking about the first issue of this miniseries as we take a look at Edge of Spider-Geddon #1. And if you can't tell by the cover, Issue 1 focuses on Hobie Brown, aka Spider-Punk. But what is he doing? Well, the comic actually opens with the good Mr. Brown as he's beating the shit out of a skinhead, specifically Eric Masters, who, for you comic aficionados, you will recognize that name as, well, Eric Masters was the second Thor in the comics, although the main universe Eric Masters was actually a good guy. And even after he wound up giving up the Thor mantle, even after he returned the Thor mantle to its original bearer, he wound up going on to become the superhero Thunderstrike. So there you go. But either way, I'm getting off topic. In Hobie's world, he's a Nazi. Yeah, I'm not even kidding. He's still apparently Thor in this universe, but he's a Nazi. Hobie even mentions that he's been working for the Red Skull, and the part of the reason why Hobie is here at all is because he went into the Bowery to try and grab Mjolnir, but Hobie caught him and stopped him before he could actually utilize it. And so that's where this comic, the comic opens up as Hobie is thoroughly teaching him a lesson that he will not forget, which involves beating the shit out of him with a bat. As such, after Eric is on the ground in pain, Hobie tells him to just go right back to the Red Skull and deliver a message that if he or his people ever come back into the Bowery to try and spread more of their Nazi crap, Hobie's gonna kind of is just essentially gonna beat the shit out of them. However, Eric Masters doesn't really get the chance to even get that far, as from the sky, he gets fried by purple lightning, completely incinerating him down to his bones, which shocks Hobie something fierce. He's like, okay, I guess that's one way to send a message. And so he turns to the source of this purple lightning, and it's here we meet the villain of our comic, not the Spider-Geddon of this issue. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to this world's version of Kang the Conqueror, or, as he's called here, Kang the Conglomerator. Yeah, he's a businessman in this universe, but he's still a supervillain. He has access, and like with his main universe counterpart, he hails from the future, as in his time, his corporation of Kang Co. has essentially run out the market, and apparently in Kang's future, he's actually bought the rights to the images, merchandising, and so forth of Hobie Brown, aka Spider-Punk, which actually leads to a funny running gag throughout the comic. He continually refers to Hobie as Spider-Punk, and Hobie keeps angrily correcting him that it's Spider-Man, which I kind of find amusing, because after all, while we call Hobie Hobie's nickname is Spider-Punk, that is only his nickname to differentiate him from the other Spideys of the multiverse. In his universe, he's just Spider-Man. So I like that apparently his nickname in the future has become his official name, and well, it just kind of ticks him off something fierce. But either way, yeah, Kang has bought the rights to Hobie as a superhero, and that's kind of part of the reason why he's here, because in the future, Kang has taken all of Hobie's imagery and so forth, and essentially roughed out a bit of the rough edges. He still made him a rebel, and made him essentially still represents him as a fight the power kind of person. But he's a rebel. But in his time, he's considered a rebel with a cause, and that cause is to serve Kang Co. And people just eat it up hook, line, and sinker. If not because they're fans of the whole rebel thing, they're at least fans of the idea of the whole rebel thing. It's actually earned Kang quite a pretty penny, and well. He thinks that maybe, just maybe, if he had the genuine article on with him, imagine how much more would make him. Which is why he's here, as he wants to bring Hobie with him to the Back to the Future. Of course, Hobie wants none of this shit, and the instant that he learned that in the future his image was turned into a sellout, it just pisses him off, and he wants to beat the shit out of Kang right then and there. Well, Kang mocks him and says that if he even wants to try, he would fail, as the only thing that could probably hurt him is an atom bomb. And if Hobie's not going to come with him willingly, he's going to take him by force. Which Hobie responds, like, yeah, you in what army? And Kang's like, me in this army. As he snaps his fingers, and guess what? He summons an army of Spider-Punk plushies! And they all talk! Have I mentioned I love comics yet? But yeah, pretty much, the Spider-Punk plushies all just bum rush Hobie and just start tackling him, ripping apart his costume, just burying him under their massive pile. And while Kang is just on standby mocking Hobie, talking about how futile it is for him to fight back, to just accept his fate as a corporate shill and all that crap, Hobie manages to get out one little whisper, and when Kang asks for clarification, Hobie just yells out, I'm not Spider-Punk, I'm Spider-Man. No, not in those words. Then he just breaks through, and he manages to knock off all the plushies before he swings away, though his costume does sustain some significant damage. As such, Kang orders the plushies to follow Hobie, but Hobie in the meantime is already trying to think of counter strategies. After all, he knows Kang's not going to stop till he gets him, so if he wants to send Kang off, he is definitely going to need that atom bomb that he mentioned. And thankfully, he knows where to get it, as immediately Hobie pulls out his cell phone and calls Captain Anarchy, who's in the middle of dealing... Excuse me one second. Sorry, dry throat, and I had to look up a plot point. But yeah, Captain Anarchy is dealing with their world's version of the Annihilation Wave, who apparently likes surfer music. You know, because Wipeout. But basically, they managed to make their way into Harlem, and Captain Anarchy is dealing with them. But part of the reason Hobie is calling the captain is because he needs something from him. a music tape. And when the instant Captain Anarchy hears this, like, are you sure? He said he was out of the game, but Hobie says that he needs an atom bomb, and that's the only place he can think of it. As such, Anarchy does tell him that he's got it, and so they meet. And so Spidey goes to meet with him as Anarchy is fighting the Annihilation Wave bug monsters. But even with Spidey's help, he and Cap are sadly not enough to take all of them on. But thankfully, that's where the Spider-Punk plushies come in, as they were indeed following Spider-Punk. And hey, they see these bug monsters, and they're in the way of getting their catch. So the Spider-Punk plushies start fighting the Anarchy Wave. It's hilarious, actually. It's even the bug monsters like, the fuck are those things? There's more of them. Which even Captain Anarchy's like, the hell are those? As such, Spidey just tells him it's too complicated for me to explain, but do you have the tape? And so Captain Anarchy does pull out a music tape and gives it to Hobie, though he does caution him to be careful. Though he does caution him to be careful and does tell him that he wants him to know if he's sure. But it's around that time that Kang finally reappears and talks about how he and once again further tells Hobie that it's futile to resist him, to accept his fate and all that crap. At which point, when Captain Anarchy asks who the hell he is, Spidey immediately just tells him he's a corporate shill from the future who wants to bring me back. Be careful, or he'll try and sell you out too. But what's even funnier too is that Kang mentions he's not interested in Captain Anarchy. He doesn't think he's very marketable. So as such, Captain Anarchy decides to try and fight Kang off himself to buy Spider-Punk some time, though even Hobie admits that maybe Captain Anarchy shouldn't fight him alone, because after all, Kang's from the future and he's got future tech on his side. Odds are Captain Anarchy wouldn't be able to stand a chance, but the good captain tells him it's fine. He's got his super whatever serum in him. It's not the super soldier serum, but it's something, but it gives him the same powers. And he's got his shield. He'll be fine. So Spidey just tells him, look, okay, fine, just give me 5 minutes, and after that, just bail. I gotta go find him before he swings away while Captain Anarchy dukes it out with Kang. As such, Spidey manages to swing through the city until he eventually makes his way to the rooftop, where we see a punk rock guy with like a mohawk and sunglasses, just kind of sitting on a lawn chair and minding his own business. And Hobie goes up to him and identifies this guy as Robbie. And Robbie, when Hobie appears, Robbie kind of freaks out a little, but Hobie explains that it's okay. He just needs his help with something. As Hobie pulls out the tape and shows it to Robbie. And the instant Robbie realizes it, he gets upset and knocks the tape right out of Hobie's hands, because apparently whatever this tape is, it's something important specifically to him. And whatever it is, it will unleash something that he can do. As he talks about, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not taking part in this. I told you I'm out and I'm not coming back, and I'm not gonna, and that's final. But Hobie tries arguing with him, talking about all these battles that they went through together to help the people of New York, to fight off monsters, bad guys, and all those sorts of things. But again, Robbie throws that back in his face and talks about how he wasn't fighting with them, they were using him. He doesn't want that anymore. But to try and appeal to Robbie more, Hobie unmasks and says, look, I'm not doing this I'm not coming to you to try and force you to do this. I'm asking as a friend, because I'm in danger. This isn't for the city, this isn't for the people, this is just me. You have the power to do something about this Kang guy. And Robbie just kind of cuts him off and silently says, what? And with great power, there must also come great responsibility, which, yeah, that's a major FU moment right there. As I'm guessing even Hobie abides by that rule, so to throw it right back in his face and just kind of be all snide about it, kind of a dick move, Robbie. As such, Hobie just finally says, you know what, fine, fuck you then, I'll just deal with this myself, you just go back to burying your head in the sand or whatever, as he masks back up and purges himself at the edge of the building that they were on, and sure enough, Kang is on the ground below, and Hobie jumps in to go fight him. However, as Hobie is jumping around all of Kang's blasts, we see that Robbie does look back at the tape, and well, he does end up picking it up. And he puts it in his tape recorder. He puts it in his tape recorder or tape whatever. It's I don't know. I forget what they're called. Basically, he just puts it into his music player, plugs his headphones in, puts his headphones in his ears, and we see. And as the music starts playing, his eyes go green. And so back on street level, as Hobie is doing his best to doing his best to evade Kang. Once again, Kang is still monologuing about how he just needs to give up, how all this is futile, and that sooner or later he will have to accept his corporate mandated fate as which he does refer to him as Spider-Punk there, until something starts falling out of the sky, going right for Kang. And it's in the next panel we see what it is, as this thing ends up crashing on top of Kang, yelling, "Spider-Man!" And we see that thing is a punk version of the Hulk. Yep, Robbie was actually Robert Bruce Banner, this world's version of Dr. Bruce Banner. And yes, it turns out that tape that they played, it's what triggers his transformation, as when he listens to it, it pumps up his veins and pretty much gets him into rage mode. And yes, this is our atom bomb, as while Kang tries his best to fight the Hulk off, it's the fucking Hulk. The Hulk just brushes off all of his attacks and just starts beating the shit out of him and knocking him around the street like a rag doll until eventually Kang is just on the ground in pain and unable to do anything. So yeah, bad guy beaten. However, as Kang is lying on the ground in pain, Hobie finally does go up to him and say, "Okay, I just need to know, why me specifically? Why not Captain Anarchy?" And Kang does clarify. It's because Captain Anarchy is kind of mixed messages. He's a flag-waving anarchist. He's against the authority, and also he looks like America. It just feels too confusing, and he didn't think it would work. Though he does admit that his costume did apparently test well with audiences. But another reason why that Kang wanted Hobie above Captain Anarchy? Simple. Apparently, Hobie dies young, like all marketable stars. And with those last lines, Kang vanishes into the future. As such, Hobie's like, well, I kind of expected it, but still, geez. And Hobie just kind of starts monologuing about how if he expected anything to kill him, it would have been the Inheritors from back during Spider-Verse, which the Hulk knows nothing about that and even says he's confused, but Hobie just tells him it's fine, it's nothing, it's just a personal thing. But before they can continue on, another portal opens up, and at first Hobie believes it's Kang coming back for more. Only the one that steps through that is Mayday Parker, aka the MC2 Spider-Woman, who immediately pops in and lets Hobie know that she wants his help with another multiversal crisis. Then, while also looking at the Punk Hulk and thinking, wait, is that a Punk version of the Hulk? Sorry. Breakfast. But basically, she asked Hobie for his help. He was willing to provide it. After all, it's a huge threat. It's something that brought them all together before. And so Hobie just kind of looks around, kind of contemplates for a couple seconds. He's like, sure, why not? I'll come join you. And so the comic ends as he and Mayday go back to the portal with Hobie singing a song about how he doesn't want to live forever. So that's fun. So, all right. So thoughts on this issue? It's fun. It's legitimately fun. Whenever we visited Hobie's universe in the past, well, before we get to that, let me at least talk about the first time we saw Hobie's universe. The first time we saw Hobie Brown's reality was I think in Spider-Verse #2, when he and his Spider Army were duking it out with Norman Osborn and his venomized police force. And and I complimented that story to hell and back for just how metal it kind of was. It was hardcore, just pushed the envelope and had fun with it. It didn't give a shit about how it looked and about what it did. It just wanted to be metal as hell, and it had fun with it all the way and back. And it was showcased not just in the writing, but also in the settings, the character designs, the artwork, the dialogue. All of it really just felt like they were just trying to push the envelope and go nuts with it. So, and I loved that for that. But after that, the next time we've seen Hobie's universe was in Web Warriors, when Hobie got pulled into the whole Tangled State storyline and had his universe kind of start crossing over with other universes, specifically the Megamorphs universe and the home world of Spider-Ham 2099. So in that one, we were able to start seeing more of Hobie's world when it wasn't in the middle of a crisis, as we saw, or at the very least when Hobie wasn't at war, as we saw Hobie starting to cross paths with the Vulture of his world, who took control of the the free info net to try and exploit the people that were utilizing it, like with Hobie and how he took control. Which since he was using that net to broadcast his music, that means he also owned all the instruments they were using to make the music. But for this one, we once again kind of peek back in as we see more of Hobie kind of dealing with the day-to-day stuff, which I like. It's a nice, the issue really kind of, in a small way, does more world building, and in a weirdly ironic way, the comic kind of continues the trend that was set up in the story in Spider-Verse #2. As everything that we see here almost feels like a parody of what we saw in the main Marvel universe. We got a punk version of the Hulk whose transformation is triggered when he listens to a certain metal tape. We see that the Annihilation Wave are a bunch of bug monsters who love listening to surfer music. Kang the Conqueror is a corporate conglomerate in the far future who only came back in time because he wanted to have Hobie become to be the face of his brand. And when it came to end, even and just throughout the whole, and while there are some serious bits throughout the story, like when Hobie confronts Robbie about helping him and Robbie justifiably doesn't want to because, well, story of the Hulk, you kind of feel like you're being exploited there. At the very least, it did actually feel like a tense moment where Hobie was trying to reach out to his friend and said, look, I need your help, and his friend saying, no, I'm not doing that. It feels legitimately tense, and both sides are understandable. Hobie doesn't get upset when Robbie tells him to screw off, but likewise, before that, he actually is just saying, look, I'm not doing this because I want to use you, I'm just asking for your help. And Robbie's reaction makes sense. Again, when it goes through the story of the Hulk, all the Hulk really wants is peace and quiet. And so when Robbie is confronted by his friend who tells him, look, I want you to be the Hulk again, he of course is like, no, I'm not doing it. It works in that regard. And I will at least give credit. While Kang definitely looks a little more silly as he trades up his power suit for a purple business suit, they still kind of find ways to make him look imposing, especially with how he is unrelenting and how he hunts down Spider-Punk. And while there is still humor in seeing him going around, especially when his personal army is an army of Spider-Punk plushies that all just scream catchphrases, it's at least they still kind of give him enough of a weight. And on top of that, while the story still feels like it kind of parodies certain aspects of the Marvel superheroes and comics, it also kind of helps. It does some good world building. As again, while all this stuff does feel kind of like a joke, it's nice to see more of it expanded on as we showcase more of how Hobie's world operates. That in his world, a corporate conglomerate really is akin to a supervillain. As after all, we got a race of bug monsters who like destroying, who live to annihilate things, but also love rocking out to surfer music. We've got a supervillain from the future who has mastered future technology, but utilizes that technology to make himself rich. We've got a Hulk who is just as weary as his main universe counterpart with a battle, and yet his transformation is triggered when he listens to hard rock music. And then likewise, in the center of it all is Hobie Brown as Spider-Punk, because ultimately in a way, he feels like the most real character, I guess. Like, because after all, Spider-Punk's whole gimmick is that he's a rebel without a cause. He's rising up against those he feels are oppressors. And so, he adopted the Spider-Man mantle because he gained these powers, and like with all Spideys, he lives under the mantra of, with great power, there must also come great responsibility. And so he believes if he has his power, it's his responsibility to use it to take down those who would oppress him and those like him. I do kind of like that. And the way Hobie does represent it, really, it kind of works. He does fit in the world, but he also feels like, ironically, the most grounded out of everything. The rest of the world kind of skirts the line between parody and seriousness, because when Hobie does talk to his friends, they all do feel like they all feel like, well, heroes. They're all doing their own things. They all have their own lives to go on. They all fighting the good fight in their own ways. Captain Anarchy, despite being an anarchist, really does kind of carry that same Captain America vibe. And when Kang openly talks about how Captain Anarchy isn't marketable, not worth enough, he just stands tall and is like, oh, now you're just hurting my feelings. And a minute before, he was just kind of wondering what the hell was going on, but then when he sees Kang there, he's like, okay, I get it. You go. I'll hold him off. So I like that. And again, Punk Rock Hulk is fucking awesome. I admit it. I mean it. When I first read the comic and I saw that Robbie was actually the Hulk, my face lit up. Like, oh my god, he's the fucking Hulk. Because I love seeing that. That's another thing I love when you have world building. Meaning not because, while Spider-Punk is the draw of this universe, this is still an alternate Marvel universe. And we have seen in previous Spider-Punk appearances that it's not just relegated to Spider-Man, that this world isn't just relegated to having its own version of Spider-Man. It does have its own versions of superheroes. And so not only do we get to have more time with Captain Anarchy and help kind of further set up his relationship with Spider-Man, which showcases that while they're friends, they are kind of a little rough, which because I'm assuming Captain Anarchy can be a bit more serious-minded compared to Hobie, because I'll give another comment to the comic. Hobie's dialogue definitely feels more akin to Spider-Man. While he definitely still feels more in your face and angry, he still managed to slip in a few quick jokes and jabs here and there that does remind you that you're reading a Spider-Man comic. So I do kind of like that. But then in that same regard, because we get to see more of Captain Anarchy. It helps flesh him out more and set up that he is more than just the stand-in for Captain America. He truly is his own version of the character, and he does still stand, and he still kind of embodies that same stalwart personality you would expect from Captain America, while kind of living as while still being an anarchist and fighting for his own reasons. And likewise, when we get to meet Robert Bruce Banner, he actually does. He has a good, justifiable personality. While there is still some good joke, while there is still kind of some nice little parody in there, because again, his transformation is triggered by listening to heavy metal music. Again, it's interesting to see how the Hulk operates in this universe. That, yeah, there is still enough there that you can recognize him. And I love how they build up to it. Like, they don't say that Robbie is the Hulk, but quite a bit of the build up to seeing him become the Hulk that kind of reflects what you would see from Bruce Banner. The desire to be alone, his outrage when told, "We want you to come back," or when he says, "You guys just used me." But then, in the end of the day, when his friend truly needs him, he still says, "You know what, fuck it," and then turns into the Hulk just to save Hobie. It's legitimately a nice scene, and it does well in not only establishing this version of the Hulk, but showcasing more of how he works in the universe. And I love that bit of world building. So I dig it. I think it's nice. And I like it. So I guess in the whole, the first issue isn't very big and doesn't feel grand, it's still a fun story that does well in showcasing more of Hobie's world and how it operates, while also setting up more of the heroes of this world and its inhabitants. We get a bit more of Captain Anarchy and how he operates. We get to see more of this world's version of certain superheroes, like with the Hulk, and to a lesser degree Eric Masters. I say lesser degree because because as I said, he's a skinhead in this universe, and well, skinheads aren't typically the good guys. So yeah, while there's a part of me that geeks out about seeing an alternate version of him, there's also a part of me that kind of moans when I realize, oh, he's a Nazi. So yeah, but then again, he also gets fried in the issue, so maybe it kind of evens out. But at the end of the day, we also get some kind of good humor with seeing Kang the Conglomerator, which is just silly and stupid, but also just kind of fun. It's got good action, kind of fun pacing. It does well in further establishing more of Hobie as a version of Spider-Man, as well. He definitely is a punk, definitely feels like a punk who definitely has a mean streak to him. He still has enough of the humor that you could recognize from Spider-Man. And on the whole, it's just a fun time. The issue is a fun time, and it's a fun time. It kind of skirts the line between parody and seriousness in a way that definitely makes both work with each other. And on the whole, it's just enjoyable. The first issue is enjoyable. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. So, yeah. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson. I hope to see you on Tuesday as we look at issue 2 of Edge of Spider-Geddon and peek back into the world of Penny Parker, as we see her meet another one of her world's versions of a Spider-Man villain. So till then, I hope you have a good Saturday, and as always, take care.